Some stories are just stories, legends whispered around a campfire, tales told to scare children into behaving. But some stories aren't just stories. They're warnings. They're echoes of something real, something tangible, that stalked the shadows of an unsuspecting town and left a scar that has never truly healed. This is one of those stories, a story of a creature that defied explanation, a harbinger of doom that appeared from the darkness and vanished with a scream. This is the terrifying true story behind the Mothman. It begins in the quiet, unassuming river town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, in the mid-1960s. A place of community, of industry, of simple lives lived against the backdrop of the Appalachian Mountains and the slow-moving Ohio River. But in November of 1966, the tranquility of Point Pleasant was shattered. The first widely reported encounter, the one that threw this local terror into the national spotlight, occurred on the night of November 15, 1966. Two young couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry, and Steve and Mary Millette, were driving late at night near an abandoned World War II munitions plant, an area known locally as the TNT area. It was a desolate, eerie place, a maze of concrete domes and decaying structures reclaimed by nature. As they drove through the darkness, their headlights caught something that froze the blood in their veins. Standing by the side of the road was a figure unlike anything they had ever seen or could have possibly imagined. It was tall, perhaps 6 or 7 feet, and broad-shouldered, shaped vaguely like a man, and most terrifying of all, it had 2 huge, glowing, hypnotic red eyes. The creature seemed to take no notice of them at first, but then it unfurled its massive wings and shuffled awkwardly toward the old plant's generator. Panicked, Roger Scarberry slammed his foot on the accelerator, peeling away from the scene and racing back toward town on Route 62. But the nightmare wasn't over. Linda Scarberry would later describe its flight as effortless, gliding through the air without flapping its wings, easily keeping pace with their car as it reached speeds of over 100 miles per hour. The sound it made was even more unsettling, a high-pitched squeaking, like a giant mouse, that seemed to pierce the cabin of the car and the very minds of the terrified occupants. For miles, the winged monstrosity shadowed them, its red eyes burning in the darkness behind them, a relentless predator from another world. Only when they reached the city limits of Point Pleasant, where the lights of civilization pushed back the gloom, did the creature finally veer off and disappear into the night sky. Shaken to their core, the two couples drove straight to the Mason County Courthouse and burst into the sheriff's office to report what they had seen. He knew these couples. They weren't pranksters or known troublemakers. He could see the genuine terror in their eyes. He later told reporters, "I've known these kids all their lives." He followed them back to the TNT area, his patrol car's spotlight cutting through the darkness. But when his radio crackled to life, a strange, high-pitched static, like the sound the couples described, filled his car before cutting out. Something was out there. The official report filed by Deputy Millard Halstead simply noted a large bird. But everyone who heard the story knew it was something more. Drawing inspiration from the popular Batman TV series of the era, he dubbed the mysterious creature the Mothman. Once the story hit the papers, the floodgates opened. It turned out the couples on November 15th weren't the first to see it. Just a few days earlier, on November 12th, a group of 5 men were digging a grave in a cemetery near Clendenin, West Virginia, not far from Point Pleasant. Suddenly, something they described as a brown human being launched itself from the nearby trees and soared over their heads. They were seasoned, hard-working men, not prone to flights of fancy. Yet they were adamant about what they saw. The sightings began to pour in, painting a chillingly consistent picture. It was seen by people from all walks of life. housewives, construction workers, and even pilots. It stalked lovers' lanes, swooped down in front of cars on dark country roads, and peered into windows from the surrounding woods. People started arming themselves, and armed pauses of hunters began combing the TNT area, hoping to bag the mysterious beast. They found nothing. No body, no tracks, no physical evidence of any kind, despite the dozens of eyewitnesses. The creature seemed to exist just on the edge of our reality, a phantom that could interact with our world but leave no trace. People reported seeing strange lights in the sky, UFOs hovering silently over the TNT area and the Ohio River. Telephones would ring, only to be answered with bizarre electronic noises, beeps, and strange metallic voices speaking in cryptic, nonsensical phrases. Poltergeist activity was reported in some homes, with objects moving on their own. These weren't the charismatic secret agents from the movies. The men in black reported in Point Pleasant were deeply unsettling. They were strange, almost inhuman figures, dressed in immaculate black suits, driving brand-new yet out-of-date black Cadillacs. They visited eyewitnesses of the Mothman and UFO phenomena, often showing up unannounced. They would ask bizarre, nonsensical questions, display a strange ignorance of common objects, and speak in a monotone, robotic voice. Their skin was often described as oddly tanned or unnaturally pale, their facial features vaguely foreign or off. They weren't just investigating, they were intimidating. They warned people to stop talking about what they had seen, implying dire consequences if they didn't. Some researchers, like the paranormal author John Keel, who traveled to Point Pleasant to investigate the events firsthand, believed the Mothman, the UFOs, and the Men in Black were all connected, part of a single baffling and terrifying phenomenon that had descended upon this small West Virginia town. For 13 months, from November 1966 to December 1967, Point Pleasant lived under the shadow of the Mothman. The sightings, the strange lights, the eerie phone calls, and the menacing men in black all created an atmosphere of constant, low-level dread. The town felt like it was the subject of a bizarre and terrifying experiment. The climax of this strange period, the event that would forever link the Mothman with tragedy and cement its reputation as a harbinger of doom, came on the evening of December 15, 1967. It was rush hour, and the Silver Bridge, a vital artery connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia, to Gallipolis, Ohio, was packed with cars full of people heading home from work and doing their Christmas shopping. Without warning, at approximately 5 p.m., a single eye-bar in the suspension chain of the 39-year-old bridge snapped. A horrifying, grinding shriek of tortured metal filled the air as the entire structure buckled and collapsed into the icy, dark waters of the Ohio River in less than a minute. It was a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions. 31 vehicles plunged into the river. 46 people lost their lives, their bodies pulled from the freezing water and the wreckage for days afterward. 2 of the victims were never found. The town of Point Pleasant was plunged into grief and shock. And in the aftermath, a chilling realization dawned. In the days and weeks leading up to the collapse, sightings of the Mothman had reportedly intensified around the Silver Bridge. Some even claimed to have seen the creature perched on the bridge itself on the very day it fell. The question was unavoidable, and it haunts the legend to this day. Was the Mothman responsible for the disaster? Did its presence somehow cause the bridge to collapse? Or was it something else entirely? Was this creature, this dark angel with burning eyes, not a monster of destruction, but a messenger of it? Was it trying to warn the people of Point Pleasant of the impending doom? A silent, terrifying Cassandra whose warnings went unheeded? After the collapse of the Silver Bridge, the Mothman vanished. The sightings stopped. The UFOs disappeared from the sky. The strange phone calls ceased. The men in black faded back into whatever shadowy world they came from. It was as if the creature's purpose in Point Pleasant, whatever it may have been, was fulfilled. The official cause of the bridge collapse was determined to be a structural failure, a tiny stress crack in a single eyebar that had grown over decades until it finally gave way. It was a failure of metal, of engineering, of inspection. But for many in Point Pleasant, and for the countless people who have since been captivated by this story, that simple explanation is not enough. They can't shake the feeling that something more was at play. The story of the Mothman has become a modern American folktale, a chilling piece of paranormal Americana. But for the people who lived through it, it was all too real. It was the sound of giant wings in the night. It was the sight of two burning red eyes staring out from the darkness. It was the fear that something ancient and unknown had chosen their town as its hunting ground, or perhaps its pulpit. Was it a misidentified bird, like an owl or a sandhill crane, as skeptics suggest? Was it a mass hallucination, born of fear and suggestion in a small, isolated community? Or was it truly a supernatural entity, an ultra-terrestrial, a harbinger of disaster that briefly crossed the veil into our world? We may never know for sure. The mystery is what gives the story its power, its enduring chill. It reminds us that there are still shadows in the corners of our maps, places where the unexplained can bleed through. It reminds us that sometimes, when you stare into the darkness, something stares back.